Chairperson, the failure on two occasions by the Minister of Finance to present to Parliament a credible macroeconomic strategy and fiscal framework that are worthy of Parliament's approval is not a laughing matter, especially when the third attempt is a lame attempt to put out a raging unemployment, poverty, and inequality inferno with a toy water gun. Today, Speaker, marks the 37th day that the government of the Republic of South Africa has been operating without an approved budget. This fact alone represents the spectacular manner in which the Minister of Finance has betrayed the trust that South Africans, especially the poor, have placed on the government. This motion is for Parliament to express its most severe disapproval in the manner in which the Minister of Finance has mishandled the budget process and fiscal framework of the 2025 budget. Section 215 of the Constitution requires that the national budget and budgetary processes must promote transparency, accountability, and effective financial management of the economy. To give effect to this constitutional obligation, the Public Finance Management Act establishes the National Treasury in Section 5 and designates the Minister of Finance as the head of the Treasury, with the responsibility to, amongst others, coordinate macroeconomic policy and make policy decisions and manage the budget preparation process. It is our contention that the minister has failed in his constitutional obligations on two occasions to present to Parliament for its approval a budget that is transparent and is a tool for the management of the South African economy and the emancipation of our people from poverty. In addition, the minister has failed to meet his legislative obligation as the head of the Treasury to coordinate macroeconomic policy and oversee the budget preparation process in a manner that manages the South African economy effectively. Nobody, including the National Treasury, disputes the fact that our single biggest problem that even qualifies to be elevated into being the national question of today is the toxic combination of unemployment, poverty, and inequality, which has plunged the majority of our citizens into a protracted encounter with hopelessness as they continue to exist in the fringes of our bourgeois economy. South Africa's unemployment rate stands at a staggering 43.1%, representing 12.7 million people without jobs. Youth unemployment is even more alarming, 7%, with African women disproportionately affected at 51.7%. Provincial disparities are stark, with the Northwest Province recording 56% unemployment rate. These figures contrast sharply with the global unemployment rate of 4.9%, where over 80 countries have achieved full employment, defined as unemployment below 5%, generating only 249,000 jobs annually against 768,000 new labor market entrants. To achieve full employment by 2036, the economy would need to create 1.6 million jobs per year. The 2025 budget and medium-term expenditure framework will fail to deliver the growth that is needed to meet the government's own medium-term development plan, a GDP growth target of 3% by 2030. This target is far beyond the reach of the standards and trajectory that the National Treasury has set with the current budget. The attempt by the Minister of Finance on two aborted occasions to introduce a deeply flawed VAT increase was the height of an absence of emotional intelligence and ideological bankruptcy. VAT is regressive, it hurts the poor more, it dampens consumption expenditure, it is anti-growth, and it is inflationary. Even some members of the GNU pointed out the folly of attempting to introduce such a tax, with the result that the GNU took itself to court. This laid bare for the world and beyond to see the fragility of the GNU, which was born out of expedience rather than a shared vision, and to plug a hole in a 2 trillion rand budget. The tragedy, however, is that like VAT, the fuel levy increase is regressive, it hurts the poor more, it dampens consumption expenditure, and is inflationary. The minister's GNU partners failed to see this and have supported the same text in a different code. This is beyond laughable. It is a reflection of a crisis of conscience, a crisis occasioned by the agreement of incompatible strange bedfellows to carry out their foolish fantasies while our country burns at the altar of bourgeois capitalism. It represents an act of cowardice to tax the wealthy and redistribute wealth. The failure to meet the target of 3% annual growth and the unemployment crisis represent deep structural challenges that require a multifaceted policy response. The MKP proposals for a radical fiscal framework that will address South Africa's economic ills include large-scale public investments in infrastructure, industrial policies to increase labor-intensive growth, and expanded public employment programs such as the Presidential Employment Stimulus and expanded public works program. Government is a custodian of public confidence. The delays in passing the budget are an indication of government's inability to manage the economy, and it stifles growth. This undermines public confidence. The failure to present on 2 previous attempts a budget that is credible enough for Parliament to approve is not just a procedural hiccup. It is a symptom of a deeper systemic challenge that is confronting the Treasury, which is costing this nation too much. South Africa needs strong, decisive leadership to navigate the triple evils of unemployment, poverty, and inequality, and steer the country to a path of stability and inclusive growth. The budget was an opportunity for the Minister of Finance to provide clarity and direction and offer a roadmap for navigating our deep-cutting structural problems that are weighing heavily on those who, on a daily basis, have to suffer the indignity of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. Sadly, this opportunity was squandered. We therefore move that for this ignoble oversight, Parliament needs to censure the Honorable Minister. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thanks to all in the House. I rise today on behalf of Mkhonto Sizwe Party to move this motion of censure against the Minister of Finance in terms of Rule 124(6)(b). Let me be abundantly clear. This motion is not about the mishandling of a budget. It is about the betrayal of public trust and the constitutional dereliction of duty by a minister who failed spectacularly in the single most important task of his portfolio, to table a credible, lawful, and transparent budget. Why is this complicated? Honorable members, this year began with fiscal chaos. For the first time in the dawn of democracy, the tabling of national budget was postponed, not due to a national disaster, not due to war, but due to executive disarray. This is unprecedented. It plunged the country into uncertainty, rattled confidence in our economy, and left provinces, departments, and municipalities without guidance. Then when the budget finally limped its way through to Parliament, what did we receive? A shameless attempt to hike VAT under cover of crisis. A 0.5 percentage point increase that may look modest on paper, but in reality, it was an effective 3.3% increase. A cold and calculated cruel blow to the poor, to pensioners buying bread, to single mothers buying school shoes, to unemployed youth scraping together coins for transport. This was not just a bad policy. It was fiscal violence inflicted by those too cowardly to tax the wealthy, too compromised to close corporate loopholes, and too lazy to pursue genuine developmental alternatives. And here, House Chair, allow me to state the truth that is plain to the people, but feared in the corridors of power. Were it not for the rise of the MK party, the African National Congress would today still hold a majority. And if that were the case, VAT would have already risen to 17% as we speak. No court would have changed that. Like no court changed the hike from 14 to 15% VAT when Mr. Ramaphosa took office in 2018. We must all remember they climbed down from the satanic 2 percentage point increase. It is thanks to the historic blow delivered to the ANC by the MK party. Fact. The cruel engine of unchecked austerity was halted. The cavalier approach to passing bills was terminated. The MK party did not just remove a majority, it removed a blank check for neoliberal cruelty. It removed arrogance. House Chair, the MK party, we made a disgusting observation in the House when the VAT hike was first pushed through fiscal framework. We witnessed scenes of jubilation in the ANC benches and their fellow travelers. They clapped, they cheered, they celebrated what they thought was a clever victory. Thank God it turned out to be hollow, narrow, and short-lived triumph of treasury orthodoxy over human need. The devil didn't succeed. Honorable members, what kind of party celebrates taxing the poor while refusing to touch the obscene profits of mining houses, banks, and monopolies? What kind of government smuggles in anti-poor policy under cover of confusion and then pats itself on the back? That moment of celebration was a moment of shame. The people were watching, and the people will remember this in 2026 local government elections. We're not simply dealing with policy misjudgment here. We're dealing with a collapse of fiscal and moral leadership. The minister's conduct in this process, the delays, the secretive U-turns, the lack of accountability all point to someone unfit to inspire confidence, unfit to lead public purse, unfit to claim legitimacy without scrutiny. We have lost confidence in Minister Godongwana. This parliament is the watchdog of the Constitution. We must not sit silently while the executive, and in particular the National Treasury, begins to act as if parliament is an inconvenience rather than an equal branch of governance. I therefore move that this House, number one, notes with grave concern that the Minister of Finance mishandled the national budget process, undermining the integrity, credibility, and constitutional responsibilities of fiscal governance. Secondly, further notes that this mishandling included the unprecedented postponement of the budget, creating fiscal uncertainty and public trust. Thirdly, acknowledge that the delayed fiscal framework included a deeply regressive VAT hike, abandoned only after Parliament already adopted it. Fourthly, observes with dismay that this hike was met with celebration by the ANC caucus and its fellow travelers, despite the pain it promised to inflict on the most vulnerable. Fifthly, affirms that if the ANC still had its majority, this VAT increase would have passed unopposed, and credits the sound intervention of the people, including the rise of the MK party, for breaking the back of the arrogant and anti-poor governance led by the ANC. Sixthly, assess that these events constitute a failure of leadership, a violation of constitutional principles, and a breach of public confidence. Finally, the House should